Just coming back to the regulatory changes. So I know there was one recently once again, this is being filmed for the viewers in 21st of October, but South Australia had some regulatory changes, which were, I guess, challenging in the inverter space. Can you tell me a bit about that and any others that are currently happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit of a common theme here right across the country of, I think governments and the regulators, I think it's fair to say we're a bit behind the ball as far as the pace of change that was occurring in the industry. I mean, I think, the uptake of rooftop solar, for example, I don't think many people predicted that it would quite grow as quickly as it has. And so I think what that means is that, our regulators and governments generally haven't quite prepared the way for the technology to roll out as quickly as it can. And I think we're therefore doing a bit of catch up. I think as a country, we've probably spent too much of the last decade debating whether climate change existed or not, and not preparing for the inevitable transition to rooftop solar and batteries and large scale wind and solar, and those technologies are now rolling out hard and fast. And so we're playing a bit of catch up. I think South Australia is an example of where the government wanted to change some of the technical requirements on inverters. To be frank, it's a technical capability that already exists. It exists and is used elsewhere around the world. It's largely a capability that's built into most of the inverters. And so, on one level, it's a change that we kind of welcome and we're expecting, but I think it's fair to say the way they handled it, and there's a bit of a theme here, the way they handled it really wasn't very sensible. The timelines they put in place, the expectations and demands they put in place on industry were pretty unrealistic. As the development cycle for an inverter takes some time to get new capability switched on, to get the certification from the labs around the world. It all takes a bit of time. And so I think our biggest challenge in South Australia was that they went from kind of ignoring this technology and capability to demanding it be in place in a very short period of time, and that created a fair bit of frustration. And it's still playing out, but it has been frustrating. And I think we pushed back hard on the South Australian government on some key parts of it, and I think it got to a better outcome than it might have. And we're now talking to other state governments to say, this is a direction you might want to go in, but here's how you should handle it, and make sure you give industry plenty of notice to get ready for it. Make sure you think carefully about what the regulatory changes are, and why you want them and what you're trying to achieve. So there's definitely some lessons in that, but on the whole, I mean, there is a lot of change occurring, and on the whole, it's for the better. It's really about creating smarter technology, being able to put more power in the hands of the customer, improving safety, improving the way solar and batteries contribute to the grid, etc. So on the whole, it's pointing in the right direction. It's just we're having to play catch up, and sometimes governments and regulators aren't handling these things as well as they might.
Okay. Do you have any idea why there was such a short time frame for the delivery of that one? Or?
Oh, look, I think, to be honest, what's happened in South Australia is, we're already starting to see where the take up of rooftop solar, and indeed the level of generation from renewables, is meeting the entirety of South Australia's energy demand at some moments in time. And I think that's crept up on them. It came a lot quicker than they expected. And in managing the system in moments where, solar and wind are meeting all of their energy demand, it does require some different ways to manage the system, and therefore they require some different functionality within, in this case, the solar inverters to be able to manage the system in that environment. And I think it's fair to say they probably hadn't thought about that and prepared for it ahead of time, and therefore they were a little bit panicked and wanting to put it in place certainly before summer arrives in South Australia.
Okay. Do you think that? Do you think that was just? I mean, it was obviously a very important change that needed to happen. Do you think that they were setting the timeframes, purposefully tough, but they were reviewing it and potentially looking to extend if it wasn't going to be met in time? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think they demonstrated a level of flexibility. I think certainly their initial timeframes were entirely unworkable, and we pushed back hard, with the department and the minister's office, and made that point very clearly that this just was not going to be workable and wouldn't have been effective. And so, I think where we got to was a bit of a middle ground, not perfect. It still put a lot of pressure on industry, and it's still playing out now, and has created a level of frustration and disruption in the industry. It's better than what it could have been. But hopefully industry will be able to sort of settle down and meet the requirements. More and more inverters are able to demonstrate they meet the requirements, and hopefully it won't have caused too much disruption. Certainly, I think, and we've made this point strongly to the South Australian government and other governments, I think they've learned from it, and I think next time they'd set some different timelines and be a bit more pragmatic and sensible in terms of what their demands are on industry.